Chris Mackowski of Emerging Civil War. I'm with Tim Talbott at Pamplin Historical Park, and Tim is the Director of Education and Interpretation here. And I think one of the most fantastic features of this whole park is this chance to walk in the footsteps of a common soldier. Tell us a little bit about where we're at and what we're about to do.
So we're inside the National Museum of the Civil War Soldier, and we're at our permanent exhibit called Duty Call Me Here, and this is the common soldier's experience during the Civil War. And you're exactly right. When we look at especially battlefield maps and we see those red and blue blocks, we sometimes forget that there's actually human beings being represented by those blue and red blocks that have thoughts and feelings and desires and dreams. And hopefully this exhibit puts a little bit of that humanity back into the common soldier's experience. So what we've been able to do is have a representation of soldiers, both North and South, but this is the common soldier's experience, so we only cover really from a private up to a lieutenant. And you go through the museum, choosing one of those soldiers as your guide. You get to use an audio device, and at different stops in the museum, you get to hear not only that soldier's experiences taken from his original primary sources, but also you get to hear different topics on soldiers' life, whether that's the games they played, the food they ate, the shelters that they stayed in, what their experiences were going to visit the physicians, the doctors, what prisoner of war camp life was like, all these different topics, 45 different topics, in addition to the 4 stories you hear about the soldiers.
And of course, when someone comes in and they get one of those devices, they don't know what's going to happen to their person till they get through. So you could have one of 45 very individual experiences going through here.
That's exactly right. And that's kind of the hook to keep you going through the museum, to make sure that you go through the end to find out what happens to your soldier.
So we're going to take a look inside, and Tim's going to kind of explain some of these highlights of this process for us, and we're going to walk in the footsteps of some soldiers. All right, so Tim, we've walked into the museum and suddenly we've walked into camp life. Tell me what's going on here.
Yeah, so we tried to build an exhibit that will appeal not only to the hardcore Civil War enthusiast, but also to the very casual learner of Civil War II. So we try to give them an idea of what these guys are kind of experiencing when they come in to service, especially those first enlistees. When they go through the drill, they get to learn and hear what Civil War soldiers are doing as they acclimate from citizens to soldiers.
Now, I saw on the wall behind us, it looks like there are some civilians or politicians either telling some guys how to shoot or getting these guys to show off for them. So this is actually these guys before they've gotten their uniforms.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
Yeah, it's again that sort of breaking down, trying to get rid of that individuality that they have as civilians and working together as a cohesive team that they're going to form. And as we know, as Civil War enthusiasts are going to be sort of like the company, the bedrock of the Civil War armies.
Now, right behind us, some pretty brightly colored fellas. Everybody loves a Zouave, as you've said. Tell us about the Zouaves there.
So the Zouaves, of course, are those soldiers who have been chosen to fight in these very brightly colored uniforms fashioned off of the French Algerian troops. And it was kind of the height of military fashion at the day, and that got carried into the American Civil War with some of these units. And some of them, although a lot of people think that they was only early in the war, actually wear these uniforms throughout the whole war.
I always think of the 140th New York from Rochester going across Saunders Field with the Wilderness in 1864, as you say, not early in the war, and bright red pants that say, "Shoot me." Not such a great fashion statement.
That's exactly right. And in this building, we've got about 25,000 square feet of exhibit space with thousands of artifacts covering all aspects of Civil War soldiers' life. And it kind of goes by theme. So this is early in the war experience. As they get seasoned into veterans, you're going to experience some other things. But this room really sets the tone.
Now, if I'm following the footsteps of one of those 45 soldiers, what might I discover in this room if I'm in one of their footsteps?
So our first Comrade station, you're going to hear about them joining up, which is just previous to this room. But in this room, you're going to learn about their experience of approaching a battle situation.
Fantastic. So that suggests to me we're about to approach battle?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. All right, so we're in the dark, in the middle of a simulated firefight, and this is one of the highlights of the park here. Tell us where we're at and what's going on.
So this part of the exhibit is called Trial by Fire, and it's an attempt to try to safely indoctrinate or show our visitors kind of like what Civil War combat is. So you go into sort of a tunnel out through the woods, and you emerge and you see some skirmishers like you see behind us. the floor shaking, there's air, puffs of air go by your head like there's bullets flying by. So everybody remains safe, but it gives you a small taste of kind of what these guys are experiencing.
And it is incredibly immersive. And the first time I came in here, I couldn't believe the environment, what was going on around me. And certainly it's not the same as having real bullets zipping by, but all of a sudden you feel those puffs of air, and it's like, ooh, you know, and it really gets you in a way that reading a map doesn't, you know, reading a book doesn't.
Yeah, we're certainly not trying to trivialize or glamorize combat, but we do want to try to show our visitors kind of what these guys were experiencing to a certain level.
Fantastic stuff. We're going to keep going through the museum. The ground is shaking beneath us. Fantastic stuff.
In this room we have some really unique artifacts. Some of these things that were damaged by battle. For instance, over here we have a pocket Bible that a bullet hit and a soldier had been carrying in his pocket, and it saved his life. Here we have some pieces of a musket that have been damaged by battle, a tree that was hit by a cannonball, and then 2 bullets that somehow magically just happened to find each other and hit nose to nose and fused together. Really rare thing. Only a few of them still in existence. So one of the neat things about the battle, about the museum, is seeing those original artifacts here for your own self.
As we continue on, we've just gone through a gallery that talks about medicine, and now we're into some more camp life.
Yeah, this particular gallery is called Surviving in the Field, and it discusses a lot of the stuff that soldiers encountered during their experience. So things like the influence of religion on soldiers. Of course, the soldiers' favorite spot on payday was the sutlers. Winter quarters, how they're surviving during the winter months, trying to build their own improvisational shelters. Things that are going like punishment, the ways that officers are trying to keep discipline within the armies and their men, and also the importance of communication. So behind us, there's lots of boxes, and of course the wagons you see back there, talking about the importance of mail and communication with the folks back home as being that link from the Army to the home front.
And of course, when we think about the Civil War, we think about this battle or that battle, but you know, they might fight for 3 days and then be off for 3 months. And so the rest of that time is what we're experiencing in this room.
Yeah, the soldiers spent the vast majority of their experience in a camp environment. We sometimes lose focus of that because we do think about those big battles. But this really helps us, again, put ourselves in the shoes of those men in these environments. So you've got everything from a boardwalk to our floors look like a muddy field where they've been walking with their footprints in it. We're all trying to bring our visitor into the situation.
So Tim, we've made our way all the way through the museum, lots of fascinating stuff about soldier life. And then in this gallery, here's where our stories all finally come together.
Right, so this is the last Comrade station, as we call it, where you find out, most soldiers or most guests find out the fate of their men. Sometimes they might find it the early one if your soldier dies early, but this is usually where they find out the fate of their soldier. And this room's really helps us show the diversity of Civil War soldiers' experiences. So we've got a room surrounded by photographs, period photographs of Civil War soldiers. And you know, they come from all backgrounds. You got German American soldiers, you got Irish American soldiers, Italian American soldiers, Hispanic, Native American, African American. They're all represented in this room, even some women soldiers who fought in the Civil War. So it really helps our visitors better understand the vast diversity of Civil War soldiers.
The thing that struck me when I first walked in here and just seeing these walls of soldiers and portraits, these are guys just like you and me.
That's right. They came from everyday walks of life, just like all of us do. And this experience of 4 years just obviously drastically changed their outlook in their lives.
Yeah. And we tend to look at it and the grand picture of the change the nation went through because of those 4 years. But of course, it goes without saying, it's so transformational in the lives of these men, the people that are around them, their families, their communities. And we tend to forget sometimes about that level of change that happened.
Yeah, and just like the soldier comrades that we give our guests the opportunity to choose, they have different fates. Some of them are going to survive, some of them die from disease, some of them die from battle injuries, some of them spend time in prisoner of war camps. So you're going to get that wide variety.
Fantastic. Chris Mackowski with Tim Talbott. I'm having the privilege today of being shown around at Pamplin Historic Park. Tim, this has been great so far. I can't wait to see what else you have in store for us today.
Excellent, great.
More to come.